Hello, it's time for another episode of It's Not About You. My name is Bob Benson. I pastor Christ Lutheran Church. We've been talking about how even our salvation is not about us. Do we benefit from our salvation? Yes, we do. But our salvation is about God bringing glory to himself through our stories. And there's a story in the Old Testament that I've just been enthralled with the last few days. I've looked at and read. It's the story of Jonathan and David. Now, if you think about it, and you think about their relationship, it says in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1, "And as soon as they had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul." There was a connection between these two guys, and I want you to realize that this connection was selfless. Okay, Jonathan, who was Saul's son, was supposed to be the heir apparent to the king. So he would have, when Saul died, Jonathan would have been named king. But this connection that he has with David, he sees through this connection and through their friendship that God has called David to be king instead of Jonathan. And in verse 4, it says that he loved him, in verse 3, he loved him as his own soul. It says in verse 4, "And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword and his bow and his belt." I can imagine Jonathan standing there almost completely, he's got his underwear on, and handing everything to David. In essence, giving him the kingship. Jonathan was the rightful king, but he knew that God had done something in David's life, and he knew that God had called David to be king, and he shows this here. "And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was all good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. But it was also good in Jonathan's sight." These are all things that Jonathan should have been doing, and Jonathan should have been recognized for. But he stepped out of the way to have God appoint David as the king. That's selflessness. Most of us are selfish enough that we want what we think we deserve, and we will stand in line and wait for it. And Jonathan steps aside to let David take his rightful place. That's the kind of selflessness that we're called to as Christians. We're called to be selfless with our time, our talents, and our abilities, and invest in kingdom good. That's my encouragement for you this week. Go ahead and go back and read about Saul and David and Jonathan and their relationships, the rocky relationship, and this great relationship between David and Jonathan, and you'll be encouraged by it. So that's my challenge for you this week. Thank you for taking the time to watch. It's Not About You. My name is Bob Benson. Thanks.